Top of the morning, fight fans. This is Kurt DeVille with Counterpunch Boxing News, and I have some new news concerning Canelo Alvarez. Canelo Alvarez states that when facing southpaws, he says, "I'm way better than I was when I fought Lara." Okay. There was a great debate about whether Canelo Alvarez deserved to win the last time he boxed a smart, skillful southpaw. 6.5 years later, the 4-division champion is completely confident that he is much more equipped to beat Billy Joe Saunders than he was when he encountered Erislandy Lara. Alvarez edged Lara by a split decision, but the result of their 12-round junior middleweight match in July 2014 is considered controversial. The 30-year-old Alvarez has since evolved into arguably the best boxer pound for pound in the sport. The Mexican icon believes that he'll be evident when he boxes Saunders on May 8th at a site to be determined. Okay. He states that I'm way better now. Okay. Because I'm more of a mature fighter. I'm a more complete fighter, and I have much more experience. I'm in my best moment, said Alvarez, which is 55, 1-2, and 37. Wow. Okay. Let me counterpunch. There's no doubt that Canelo Alvarez is one of the best fighters that's fighting today. Okay. He's on the pound for pound list for a reason. He went from 154, 155, 160, 164, 168, 175. Okay. 155 is, of course, the Canelo weight that he used for about 5 to 6 fights. Now, while he was at 155, he did fight a guy named Lara. When he was at 152, he fought a guy named Floyd Mayweather. Okay, that was for the super welterweight title. Okay, at the time he was 42-0 at the time. Okay, with 43 fights, 42 wins. I don't remember how many knockouts, but he was outclassed by Mayweather. But that's Mayweather. We're not talking about Mayweather. We're talking about Lara. Okay, so let's focus on that fight. Erislandy Lara called out Canelo Alvarez because he felt he could beat him. He felt he was the better fighter. When they got in the ring that night, despite Canelo Alvarez beating the guys that he beat with ease, Angulo and who else did he beat? A lot of older fighters like Mosley. He beat those guys, Valdemir, and he was on his way to claiming that he was one of the next top superstars after taking that loss to Floyd. But when he went in there and fought Erislandy Lara, we learned a lot about Canelo. We learned that he was more flat-footed than a lot of people wanted to admit. Okay, he could throw punches only from a certain stance, and if he did launch, he had more of a sluggish pouncer style when he threw punches. He missed a lot of huge punches in that fight. And the type of punches that he threw and missed were the type of punches that we never seen him throw and miss. Okay. They were one of these that was a night that Canelo Alvarez was exposed for a particular style. Okay, being a southpaw, excuse me, you can't really use the hook like he wanted to, especially the way Lara was fighting it. Look, Lara is a pure boxer. He can sit back. He has 74.5 reach, okay? He has some long arms, and he uses them, okay? He's a southpaw, and at the time, he had great footwork. You could not stop him. You could not pin him, and that was giving Canelo fits. You can see after the bell would ring, he would be shaking his head. He would be frustrated because he knew, like, hey, what's the deal with this dude? Why isn't this guy fighting me the way I want him to fight? That was the whole thing. And I think that particular fight, we learned a lot about Canelo. But what Canelo did start to do, he started working the body. Okay, he could not hit the head because Lara was too out of range. Lara was perfect with his range because he had established it from the first beginning of the fight. But he started working the body. Okay, so when Lara would move left to right, He would try his best to cut off the ring, and then we found out he really wasn't good at cutting off the ring. That he's not a traditional fighter. That's why fighters like Angulo had better success with Lara than Canelo. Canelo is a guy that wants you to come towards him to engage with him, and then he will then open up the, set up the type the counter punches that he needs when you get close enough for him or to him. Okay, that's his deal. Okay, now though, well, at that time, should I say, Lara and Canelo had one very controversial fight. Canelo landed 24 headshots in the whole fight. Lara outlanded him, of course. Lara basically was the king of the jab, straight left. Okay. He was catching him with right hooks. I would prefer a lot of through more right hooks, but the whole thing about fighting someone like Canelo, you don't want to put yourself in a position to get hurt. Okay. It's about hitting and not getting hit. People forgot that. But what we saw, Canelo did edge on and make his claim for going to the body. Now, all body punches are power shots. Okay. Now, did he outscore Lara with power shots? I don't really remember. Okay. But I know overall Lara outpointed that guy. It was similar to the punch output of the first Golovkin fight in Canelo. Okay. And we seen that as a draw. Now, the scorecards were whack, and then that started the whole hashtag Canelo on points. If you guys can remember what that means, hashtag Canelo on points, that's a real freaking hashtag. It's became famous over the years because Canelo could not lose a fight. After the Mayweather fight, they could not lose one. For the death of him, he couldn't lose one. You would have to knock him out twice to win. Right, and you might get disqualified because something weird would happen with Canelo. So those type of things were apparent, but the overall strategy of Canelo, of him fighting a guy that had good footwork and a southpaw like that, it just it just made you think, okay, that's his kryptonite. Like Dillian White, his kryptonite is an uppercut. We've seen it too many times. Okay. Now, the question is, has Canelo got better? Has he improved? Okay. And to answer the question, yes, he has got a lot better. Every time you see him fight, he shows you something different. Okay. Overall, you've seen Canelo, you've seen him in the Danny Jacobs fight. You've seen shots of it in the Austin Trout fight, but Austin Trout wasn't as slick. Austin Trout was kind of sluggish, okay? But fighting someone like Danny Jacobs, which sometimes he goes southpaw, okay? You could see he had perfected the head movement. He had perfected it. He had perfected the distance from where Danny Jacobs was. He dipped and slipped those punches with ease, okay? And he made it look easy. He did. And Danny Jacobs threw a lot of punches. Danny Jacobs is a very physical fighter. He likes to throw punches in bunches. And a lot of those flurries he missed. And it looked very impressive because Canelo's his build. Canelo's not a slick, lean fighter like a Mayweather or a Lara. He's kind of bulky. And to see a bulky guy, kind of short and compact, throw a slip and dip those type of punches were very impressive. Then get his own punches off. You know what I mean? And he'll land a jab, a right to the body, and then an uppercut upstairs. Those type of different varieties showed like, hey, man, there's more to this guy's game that he's showing us. But, that is not the question. The question is, has he got better with southpaws? And that remains to be seen. Why? Because he hasn't been in there with a slick southpaw lately, since Lara. Think about it. When was the last person that he fought that was a southpaw? Okay, Danny Jacobs, he switch hits at times, but he's no Terrence Crawford. Okay, so we don't really know. Yes, showing us different things that you've learned how to do, that's great. But are you better at the kryptonite thing, the thing that you struggle at? Are you better in that? In other words, you go to the gym, you can do 100 push-ups, but can you do 100 sit-ups? Right? Hey, I got a strong upper body, but I got a weak center. You know what I mean? So can you now perfect or work on the things that you struggled with? That's the whole idea, and that's the question. And we don't really know, okay? We don't know if he ever has got better. He may always have problems with pure boxers, you know, and that's what I would like to think, because we haven't seen him fight any of those guys. Maybe, okay, maybe the fact you haven't saw fighters like Demetrius Andrade, because he's a guy that can box, that has speed, you know. But me personally, I think Andrade gets a little reckless. But Canelo himself, has he got better? Is he more mature of a fighter? And let's talk about the maturity for a minute before I close. The maturity level was things he did against Mayweather, things he did against Lara. Those things you could see he was frustrated, like Deontay, frustrated. He was frustrated in there. You know, he picked Lara up and damn near flipped him. Okay, those type of things. He hit Mayweather in the balls. Why do you think that happened? That happened because he wasn't getting his way. Okay, and those fights were two frustrating fights for him. Lara boxed him on the outside. Mayweather countered him on the inside, and he acted as though he was losing, as though those guys were giving him problems, and it was starting to show. Despite his stone-faced demeanor, Canelo Alvarez was starting to do things in there that would reflect that he was frustrated. Okay. Now, he hasn't been like that in a while because he hasn't fought anyone like that. So we have to just see what happens. And I would love to see Billy Joe do what Lara did. Okay? Do what Mayweather did. Why? Because then we can see if he matured or not. Will he start filing and doing a lot of things like he did before? Those little subtle things, hit you in the balls and pick you up because the guy wanted to grab you because he was stopping you from attacking him, right? Those are the things we have to see. Now, can Billy Joe do that? Can he emulate that? Does he have the skill and the footwork? That's the whole thing. Lara had great footwork. Mayweather had superb footwork. Those guys with the footwork can get out of position from those punches from Canelo. That's the thing. Can he do that? But those guys had something that I don't think Billy Joe will use and have. What? Size. Lara and Mayweather, those guys are lean, slick, right? This is a bigger weight class. So Canelo looks like he's a bigger fish in a little pond, but no, he's a smaller fish in a bigger pond, but it's for his advantage because he's more mobile, because he's accustomed to fighting guys at 154, 155, 160. You know, which is a slight quicker than the guys at 168. So you see him landing those big bombs in counters. You're looking at it like, wow, it looks great. But you have to remember, Canelo's been doing this forever at smaller weights. But anyway, you guys tell me what you think about Canelo Alvarez feeling, believing, thinking that he is much more of a mature fighter now. Leave your comments below. Please subscribe. And you guys been Counterpunch. Peace.